The office hummed with quiet activity as Special Agent Morgan Chen gathered her things. Her phone buzzed with a message from her supervisor. My office. 10 minutes. Morgan checked her watch. 9:55 a.m. She walked through the FBI field office, nodding to colleagues as she passed their desks. Many were busy typing reports or talking on phones. Morgan had been with the Bureau for 7 years now. At 34, she had built a solid reputation for her attention to detail and ability to blend into any situation. Come in, Director Wilson called when she knocked on his door. Morgan entered the office and took a seat. The director wasn't alone. A man in a sharp suit sat in the corner, his face serious. This is Special Agent Torres from Financial Crimes, Wilson explained. We have a situation that needs your particular skills. Torres opened a folder and spread photos across the desk. Elite Motors, luxury car dealership downtown. We believe they're laundering money for the Kazan network. Morgan studied the photos. The dealership looked high-end, with gleaming sports cars and well-dressed salespeople. We've been tracking unusual cash movements, Torres continued. Cars sold at inflated prices to shell companies, vehicles that exist on paper but never actually change hands. Director Wilson leaned forward. We need someone inside. This operation has been careful, very careful. We haven't been able to get enough evidence for warrants. Morgan understood immediately. You need me to go undercover. Yes, this won't be a short assignment. We're looking at months, possibly longer. Torres handed her another photo. This one showed a man in his 50s, salt and pepper hair, standing next to a red Ferrari. Michael Reynolds, owner of Elite Motors. Former investment banker with connections everywhere. He's smart, careful, and well protected. The people behind this operation have resources, Wilson added. Politicians, judges, business leaders, all in their pocket. If they discover your FBI, they won't hesitate to eliminate the problem. Morgan felt the familiar mix of excitement and fear that came with every undercover assignment. What's my cover? Lily Wei, wealthy investor looking for business opportunities. Your background materials are being prepared. Torres handed her a flash drive. Everything you need to know is here. Memorize it all, then destroy it. Morgan nodded, already thinking about the preparations needed. She would have to change her appearance, her speech patterns, her whole way of moving through the world. This is strictly need to know, Wilson warned. Only the three of us and Assistant Director Clark know about this operation. Not even your regular team will be informed. I understand. Morgan pocketed the flash drive. When do I start? You have 2 weeks for preparation. After that, Lily Wei appears in town looking to invest in luxury vehicles. As Morgan stood to leave, Wilson's face softened slightly. Be careful, Chen. These people don't play games. Neither do I, sir. Back at her desk, Morgan began clearing her current cases. She would tell her colleagues she was taking family leave. Her mother in California was sick. It was a cover story she had used before. As she worked, Morgan glanced at the flash drive in her pocket. Soon, she would dive into Lily Wei's world. For months, maybe years, Morgan Chen would disappear. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. This was the job, becoming someone else so completely that even the most suspicious criminals would never question her identity. Morgan Chen was about to vanish, and Lily Wei would take her place. Morgan stood in front of the mirror in her new apartment, barely recognizing herself. Gone was her usual practical ponytail, replaced by an expensive layered cut with several highlights. Her wardrobe had transformed from comfortable FBI-issue suits to designer clothes that Lily Wei would wear. The transformation had taken 2 weeks of intense preparation. Lily Wei, she said to her reflection, practicing the slight accent she had developed for her character. Pleasure to meet you. The apartment felt strange and empty. Located in the wealthy part of the city, it had been carefully furnished to match Lily's personality. Expensive but not flashy, with carefully chosen art pieces that suggested old money and refined taste. Nothing like Morgan's real home with its comfortable couch and family photos. Morgan walked to the dining table where her cover materials were spread out. Bank statements showing millions in different accounts. A detailed background story. Business cards for her fake investment company. Even a social media presence that the FBI tech team had built, showing Lily at exclusive events around the world. All carefully photoshopped. She picked up the small notebook containing Lily's life story. Born in Shanghai, educated at prestigious schools in Europe, made her fortune in tech investments in Singapore. Morgan had memorized every detail, from Lily's favorite wine, a specific Bordeaux from 1982, to the name of her first boyfriend, Richard, a British banking hare she met at boarding school. Her phone rang, a special encrypted line connected to her FBI handler. "How's the preparation going?" Torres asked without introduction. "I'm almost ready," Morgan replied. "Final fitting for the wardrobe tomorrow, then I'm set to make first contact at the charity gala on Saturday." "Good. Reynolds never misses that event. It's your best opportunity to introduce yourself without raising suspicions." After hanging up, Morgan practiced walking in Lily's expensive heels. Her movements needed to be confident, slightly aloof, the walk of someone who had never worried about money a day in her life. She sat at the piano in the corner, another prop for her cover. Morgan had played since childhood, but Lily would have had classical training. She ran through a complex piece by Chopin, imagining Lily playing it at some exclusive Swiss boarding school. Next came language practice. Morgan was already fluent in Mandarin, but Lily would have learned English at an international school. She practiced speaking with the precise accent she had crafted, perfect English with just the faintest hint of something foreign, impossible to place exactly. The doorbell rang, startling her. Morgan checked the security camera to see a delivery man holding a package. "Your final documents, ma'am," he said when she opened the door, handing her a leather portfolio. "Directly from Mr. Torres." Inside were the finishing touches to her identity: a Chinese passport with Lily's name and Morgan's altered photo, credit cards linked to the FBI-monitored accounts, and membership cards to exclusive clubs where Reynolds and his associates were known to conduct business. Morgan practiced signing Lily's name until the movement became natural. By evening, her hand moved automatically in the elegant script they had created for Lily, completely different from Morgan's usual quick signature. As night fell, Morgan stood on the balcony overlooking the city. Somewhere out there was Elite Motors, where soon she would walk in as Lily Way, potential investor and new friend to Michael Reynolds. She felt the familiar tension in her stomach, the fear of being discovered, of making a small mistake that would give her away. One wrong reference, one slip in her accent, one forgotten detail from Lily's background could mean disaster. But beneath the fear was determination. Morgan had disappeared into new identities before. She could do it again. Tomorrow, Special Agent Morgan Chen would cease to exist. Lily Wei would take her place, ready to bring down whatever criminal enterprise was hiding behind those shiny cars and friendly smiles at Elite Motors. 3 weeks had passed since Morgan's first visit to Elite Motors. She had carefully built her relationship with Reynolds, expressing interest in both his cars and investment opportunities. Today, she sat in his plush office, reviewing documents for a potential partnership. "These profit margins are impressive," Morgan said, using Lily's measured tones as she studied the papers. "Though I wonder about the volume of sales in the European market. The numbers seem unusual." Reynolds smiled. "We have a special arrangement with our overseas partners. Very exclusive clientele." Morgan nodded, mentally filing away the information. This was exactly the kind of lead she needed: strange international transactions that could point to money laundering. A knock interrupted them. Reynolds' assistant poked her head in. "Sir, Detective Harris is here again. He's insisting on speaking with you." Reynolds' smile vanished. "Tell them I'm in a meeting. He says he'll wait." Morgan watched Reynolds' face carefully. A muscle twitched in his jaw. "Fine, give me 5 minutes." When the assistant left, Reynolds turned to Morgan with an apologetic expression. "A minor nuisance. Local police detective who thinks asking the same questions every week will somehow change the answers." "Police?" Morgan kept her voice neutral while her mind raced. No one had mentioned local police involvement in her briefings. Nothing to worry about. Just a detective who doesn't understand how high-end automobile sales work. Reynolds stood. "Would you excuse me for a few minutes? Please, take your time reviewing those numbers." After Reynolds left, Morgan quickly took photos of the documents with a tiny camera disguised as a pen. Then she moved silently to the door, listening. In the showroom, she could hear Reynolds speaking with another man. She cracked the door slightly to see them. The detective was younger than she expected, early 30s, with a rumpled suit and intense expression, not the usual type to investigate financial crimes. "Detective Harris, we've been through this," Reynolds was saying. "All our sales are legitimate." "Then you won't mind explaining how a warehouse worker affords a $500,000 car?" Harris countered. "My client's finances are not my concern. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an important investor waiting." Morgan quickly returned to her seat before Reynolds came back. Her mind was working overtime. A local detective investigating independently could be a serious complication. If he pushed too hard, Reynolds might shut down operations before she gathered enough evidence. Worse, if the detective noticed patterns that pointed to an undercover operation, her cover could be blown. Reynolds returned, visibly irritated. "My apologies for the interruption." "No problem," Morgan said. "Is everything all right?" "Just a persistent detective who doesn't know when to quit." Reynolds shook his head. "Now, where were we?" They continued their meeting, but Morgan could tell Reynolds was distracted. After finalizing plans for her to return the following week, she left the dealership, careful to maintain Lily's unhurried pace. Once safely away, she contacted Torres from a secure location. "We have a complication," she reported. "Local detective named Harris is investigating Reynolds independently." "Harris?" Torres sounded surprised. "We don't have any record of local police interest." "Well, they're interested now. He's asking about suspicious purchases. If he spooks Reynolds or accidentally interferes with our investigation." "I'll look into it," Torres promised. "In the meantime, maintain your cover and proceed as planned. We can't pull you out now that you're getting close." After ending the call, Morgan walked slowly back to her apartment. The detective was a wild card, unpredictable and potentially dangerous to her mission. She needed to learn more about him, figure out what he knew. One thing was certain: the already dangerous assignment had just become significantly more complicated. The charity gala sparkled with wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the ballroom where the city's elite mingled, sipping champagne worth more than most people's weekly salary. Lily Wee, or rather Morgan in her carefully crafted disguise, moved through the crowd with practiced grace. She wore a simple black dress that probably cost more than her real monthly salary, accessorized with a jade pendant that drew attention without being flashy. Several people had already glanced her way, curious about the unfamiliar face among their usual circles. "You look lost," a voice said beside her. Morgan turned to see a woman in her 40s, elegant in a red gown. First time at the Children's Hospital benefit. "Is it that obvious?" Morgan replied with Lily's slight accent and careful smile. "Lily Way, I recently moved to the city." "Margaret Dawson, Hospital Board. What brings you here?" This was the opening Morgan had prepared for. Investment opportunities. "I've been looking to expand my portfolio into this region." Margaret's eyes lit up at the mention of money. "Well, you've come to the right place. Half the business leaders in the city are here tonight." "Any recommendations on who I should meet?" Morgan asked, pretending to scan the room with casual interest. "Depends on what you're interested in. Real estate? Banking?" Morgan tilted her head. "Luxury goods, perhaps. I'd always had an appreciation for fine automobiles." Margaret's smile widened. "Then you absolutely must meet Michael Reynolds. He owns Elite Motors, best luxury dealership in the state." She gestured toward a man standing near the bar. "Come, I'll introduce you." Morgan followed, careful to maintain Lily's measured pace rather than her own more purposeful stride. This was happening faster than she'd expected. Her heart beat faster, but her face remained composed, just another wealthy investor looking for opportunities. Reynolds looked exactly like his photos, tall, distinguished, with perfectly cut silver hair and a tailored tuxedo. He was speaking with two other men but broke off when Margaret approached. "Michael, darling, you must meet Lily Way. She's new in town and has an interest in luxury automobiles." Reynolds turned his full attention to Morgan, assessing her with shrewd eyes that missed nothing. If there was any flaw in her disguise, he would spot it immediately. "Miss Way," he said, taking her hand. "Welcome to our city. What brings you to our little corner of the world?" "Business diversification," Morgan replied smoothly. "I've had success with investments in Asia and Europe. America seems like the next logical step." "And what do you know about automobiles?" His tone was slightly patronizing, testing her. Morgan gave him Lily's practiced smile, confident but not challenging. I know what I like, Mr. Reynolds, and I know good business when I see it. The rest, I'm willing to learn from experts. Something in her answer seemed to please him. Please, call me Michael, and perhaps you'd like to visit my showroom sometime. I have several pieces that might interest a discerning investor. I would like that very much. They exchanged business cards. Morgan's fake details printed on heavy cardstock that matched the quality of his own. Will you be in town long? He asked. I'd taken an apartment. I plan to stay until I find the right opportunity. Reynolds nodded, clearly intrigued. I'll have my assistant call you tomorrow. Perhaps a private tour of our collection. Perfect. As Morgan moved away after the conversation, she felt both relief and tension. First contact had been made, smoothly and without suspicion, but this was just the beginning. She caught Reynolds watching her several times throughout the evening as she networked with other guests. Building Lily's presence in the community would take time, but the seed had been planted. Tomorrow she would enter the Lion's Den, Elite Motors itself, and the real work would begin. Morgan stood beside Reynolds in the private showroom of Elite Motors, admiring a sleek silver Aston Martin. After a month of careful relationship building, she had been invited to a special event for top clients and potential investors. This was exactly the breakthrough she needed. What do you think? Reynolds asked, running his hand along the car's polished hood. Only 10 were made in this special edition. Exquisite, Morgan replied in Lily's appreciative tone. The craftsmanship is remarkable. Reynolds smiled, pleased with her response. I've set aside some time tonight to discuss that investment opportunity we mentioned. Several of my business associates are eager to meet you. Morgan's pulse quickened. The business associates were likely key players in the money laundering operation. I look forward to it. The showroom door opened, and Morgan felt her blood freeze. Detective Harris walked in, looking more determined than during their brief glimpse of him a week ago. Mr. Reynolds, Harris called, ignoring the irritated looks from the wealthy clients. I need to speak with you, now. Reynolds' smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. Detective, this is a private event. If you need to speak with me, call my office tomorrow. Harris was unmoved. This won't wait. He glanced around the room, his eyes passing over Morgan without recognition. Unless you prefer I ask my questions here. Reynolds excused himself from Morgan and walked to a corner with Harris. Though they spoke in hushed tones, Morgan positioned herself to overhear. Third suspicious purchase this month, Harris was saying. The buyer's income doesn't match the purchase price. Not even close. My client's finances are not my concern, Reynolds replied stiffly. Maybe they should be, especially when the cars never seem to leave the warehouse. Morgan pretended to examine a nearby Ferrari while listening. Harris was dangerously close to uncovering the same evidence she was gathering. Now, Harris continued, I'd like to speak with your staff, starting with her. He pointed directly at Morgan. Her heart skipped a beat. This was not part of the plan. Reynolds looked annoyed. Ms. Way isn't staff, she's an investor from overseas. Harris approached Morgan anyway. Ma'am, Detective Eric Harris, mind if I ask you a few questions? Morgan slipped fully into Lily's character, giving him a cool, slightly confused smile. I am afraid I don't understand. I am here as Mr. Reynolds' guest. Just routine questions, Harris insisted. How long have you known Mr. Reynolds? Reynolds stepped between them. This is completely inappropriate, Detective. Ms. Way is an important business partner visiting from abroad. Harris looked unconvinced. Is that right? And what business are you in, Ms. Way? Private equity investments, Morgan answered smoothly. Primarily in luxury goods markets. Interesting. Mind if I see some identification? Morgan's mind raced. Her fake passport would hold up, but any deeper investigation might raise flags. Before she could respond, Reynolds' security approached. Detective, I think it's time for you to leave, Reynolds said firmly. Harris looked from Reynolds to Morgan, his eyes narrowing. I'll be back with a warrant. Don't go anywhere, Ms. Wee. After Harris was escorted out, Reynolds turned to Morgan with an apologetic expression. I'm terribly sorry about that. Local police overstepping their bounds. Is this going to be a problem? Morgan asked, allowing a touch of concern in Lily's voice. Not at all, Reynolds assured her, though his expression was grim. Detective Harris is becoming a nuisance, but he has nothing. Now, shall we continue to the private room? My associates are waiting. As they walked toward the back of the showroom, Morgan felt a new tension. Harris clearly suspected something about Elite Motors, and now he was suspicious of her too. If he dug into Lily Wee's background too deeply, her cover might not hold. The evening's meeting with Reynolds' associates was crucial, perhaps her only chance to gather concrete evidence before Harris complicated things further. Morgan took a deep breath and followed Reynolds into the private room, where 5 well-dressed men waited. The real players in this game were about to reveal themselves, and she couldn't afford to miss a single detail. Morgan sat at her apartment's dining table, surrounded by notes and photos. 2 months into her undercover operation, she had gathered substantial evidence against Reynolds and his associates. The private meeting last week had confirmed her suspicions. Elite Motors was indeed laundering money for an international criminal organization. Her encrypted phone buzzed. Taurus. We have a problem, he said without greeting. Detective Harris filed for a search warrant for Elite Motors. Morgan closed her eyes briefly. When? Tomorrow morning. If he moves too soon, he'll destroy months of work. We need everything in place before any local police action. I can try to delay him, Morgan suggested. Lily Way has his attention now. Be careful, we can't have him looking too closely at you either. After ending the call, Morgan reviewed her plan. Reynolds had invited her to join a special investment group that would meet tonight. It was the opportunity she'd been waiting for, a chance to collect evidence on the entire operation. Hours later, dressed in Lily's elegant style, Morgan arrived at an exclusive restaurant's private room. Reynolds greeted her warmly, but she noticed tension around his eyes. Is everything all right? She asked. Just some business complications, he said. Nothing to worry about. The dinner proceeded with 6 other guests, all wealthy, all connected to the operation in ways they carefully avoided mentioning directly. Morgan listened intently as they discussed shipments, distributions, and special clients in coded language. Ms. Way, said one man, introducing himself as Kovacs, Reynolds tells us you might be interested in helping expand our European operations. I am always looking for profitable ventures, Morgan replied carefully. Kovacs smiled. We should discuss specifics after dinner. The returns are exceptional. The conversation was interrupted when Reynolds' phone rang. His face darkened as he answered. What do you mean? He was asking questions at the warehouse? Reynolds hissed into the phone. Keep him there. I'll handle it. Reynolds hung up and forced a smile. A minor issue at our storage facility. Victor, would you mind coming with me? The rest of you, please enjoy dessert. We won't be long. After they left, Morgan excused herself to use the restroom. Instead, she slipped out a side door and followed Reynolds to his car. She watched him drive away, then called for her own car. Follow that black Mercedes, she told the driver, but stay well back. 20 minutes later, they arrived at a large warehouse in the industrial district. Morgan had the driver stop a block away and continued on foot. She spotted Reynolds' car parked next to a police sit she recognized from the showroom incident. Moving silently, Morgan approached an open side door. Inside, she could hear raised voices. Staying hidden behind stacked crates, she peered into the main area. Detective Harris was there, facing Reynolds and 2 other men including Kovacs. The detective looked unfazed despite being outnumbered. I know what you're doing here, Harris was saying. These cars aren't being sold to real buyers. You should have accepted the offer to look the other way, Reynolds replied coldly. Now you've become a problem. Morgan's blood chilled as one of the men pulled out a gun. Harris finally looked worried, reaching for his own weapon too late as the men grabbed him. No body, no evidence, Kovacs said. The detective who disappeared investigating high-end car thefts. Tragic, but these things happen. Morgan retreated silently, heart racing. She couldn't blow her cover, but she couldn't let them kill Harris either. She needed to alert her team without revealing herself. Back in her car, she sent an encrypted message to Taurus. Emergency at Warehouse 37. Detective Harris in danger. Need immediate tactical response. Maintaining cover. Morgan returned to the restaurant just as the others were getting worried about her absence. She smiled apologetically. Sorry, I received an important call from investors in Shanghai. As she rejoined the dinner, appearing calm while discussing investment opportunities, Morgan was acutely aware that a man's life hung in the balance. She had set things in motion to save Harris, but would help arrive in time. The dangerous balance she was walking had just become a tightrope over an abyss. Morgan's hands remained steady as she sipped her wine, but her mind raced with calculations. 20 minutes had passed since she sent the emergency message to Torres. The FBI tactical team would need at least another 15 minutes to reach the warehouse, time that Detective Harris might not have. So, Ms. Wei, Kovacs said, leaning toward her across the table, how soon could you move funds into our European venture? I could transfer initial investments by next week, Morgan replied, maintaining Lily's composed demeanor. Though I would need to see the complete operation first, of course. Kovacs nodded, pleased. Reynolds speaks highly of your financial expertise. Morgan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Package secured. Warehouse clear. Relief washed through her, carefully hidden behind Lily's polite smile. The FBI team had rescued Harris. Now she needed to finish what she started. Speaking of Reynolds, she said casually, should we be concerned about his extended absence? As if summoned by her words, Reynolds and Victor returned to the private dining room. Reynolds looked slightly disheveled but was smiling. Apologies for the interruption, he said smoothly. The matter has been resolved. Morgan noted the subtle exchange of glances between the men. They believed Harris had been eliminated. She needed to act quickly before they discovered otherwise. Since we're all here again, she said, perhaps now is the time to discuss my formal involvement. I brought the preliminary investment documents. She removed a small flash drive from her purse. My terms and conditions, along with verification of my financial capacity. Reynolds took the drive. We'll review this tonight. If everything is satisfactory, we can proceed immediately. What he didn't know was that the drive contained not only convincing fake financial documents, but also a sophisticated program that would copy files when plugged into a computer. It was her insurance policy. The dinner concluded with handshakes and promises of a lucrative partnership. Morgan left the restaurant and walked to her car, maintaining Lily's unhurried pace despite her urgency. Once inside her vehicle, she immediately called Torres on the secure line. Harris is safe, Torres confirmed. But he's demanding answers. This complicates everything. How much does he know? He suspects a federal operation but doesn't have confirmation. We've contained him for now, but he's threatening to go to his superiors. Morgan made a quick decision. I need to meet with him. Tonight. That's too risky. Your cover is already at risk, Morgan interrupted. Reynolds will discover Harris is alive by morning. We need to move now. An hour later, Morgan sat in a nondescript FBI safe house, still dressed as Lily Wee. Across from her, Detective Harris looked simultaneously angry and confused. So you're telling me, Harris said, that you're an FBI agent, and I've been interfering with a federal investigation for weeks? Yes, Morgan answered in her real voice, dropping Lily's accent. We've been building a case against Reynolds and his organization for months. Harris leaned forward. Prove it. Morgan nodded to Torres, who passed Harris a folder with her credentials and details of the operation. Reynolds and his people were ready to kill you tonight, Morgan said bluntly. They're not just selling cars to people who can't afford them. They're laundering money for the Kazan Network, one of the largest criminal organizations in Europe. Harris studied the files, his expression shifting from skepticism to understanding. So what happens now? Now we have a choice, Morgan said. Either we pull me out immediately, potentially losing our best chance to take down the entire organization, or, Harris asked. Morgan looked him directly in the eyes. Or you and I work together. I go back in, using the flash drive I gave Reynolds to collect the final evidence we need. With your help. My help? How? By creating a distraction. Something that will keep Reynolds and his people focused on you while I complete the mission. Harris considered this for a long moment. These people were ready to kill me tonight. Yes, Morgan said simply. And they'll try again if we don't stop them. The detective finally nodded. What's the plan? Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Elite Motors as Morgan walked confidently through the front doors. Reynolds greeted her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ms. Way, I wasn't expecting you until our meeting this afternoon. I received some concerning news, Morgan replied in Lily's measured tones. Detective Harris has been seen alive. Reynolds' face betrayed nothing, but his fingers tightened around the coffee cup he held. That's interesting. Where did you hear this? I have investments to protect, Mr. Reynolds. I make it my business to stay informed. She leaned closer. Is there something I should know before I transfer my funds? Before Reynolds could answer, commotion erupted outside. Police cars pulled up to the dealership, lights flashing. Detective Harris stepped out of the lead vehicle, very much alive and wearing a bulletproof vest. What's happening? Morgan asked, feigning confusion and concern. Reynolds grabbed her arm. Come with me. Now. He led her through the showroom toward his office, where Kovacs and the others were already gathering, faces tense. The detective was supposed to be handled. Kovacs hissed. Obviously there was a complication. Reynolds snapped. He turned to Morgan. Miss Way, I think it's best if you leave through the back exit. Morgan allowed her expression to harden, channeling Lily's business persona. Not until I understand what's happening. If my investment is at risk. Your investment is fine, Reynolds interrupted. This is simply a misunderstanding with local authorities. Outside, Harris's voice came through a megaphone. Michael Reynolds, this is Detective Harris. We have a warrant to search these premises and the warehouse on Industrial Drive. Come out with your hands up. As the men argued about what to do, Morgan subtly pressed a button on her watch, the signal to Tories that the operation was entering its final phase. We need to destroy the evidence, Kovacs said urgently. The files, the transfer records. They're encrypted and secure, Reynolds insisted, moving to his computer. But we should move them to our offshore servers just in case. Morgan watched as he inserted her flash drive. I need to transfer all our data to a secure location, he explained to her, including your investment documents. The flash drive's hidden program activated instantly, copying every file while displaying a fake progress bar. Morgan kept her expression concerned but calm as she watched the real progress indicator on her watch, disguised as a fitness tracker. Suddenly, the office door burst open. Harris and several officers entered, weapons drawn. Police. Hands where I can see them. Reynolds reached for something under his desk, but Morgan moved faster than anyone expected. In one fluid motion, she grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back, forcing him face down onto the desk. Federal agent, she announced, dropping Lily's accent completely. Michael Reynolds, you're under arrest for money laundering, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit murder. The shock on Reynolds' face was complete. You? But... Special Agent Morgan Chen, FBI, she said, pulling out her badge while keeping him secured. Lily Way was never real. As the police arrested the others, Taris entered with the FBI tactical team. Did you get it? Morgan asked him. Taris checked the flash drive she handed him. Everything. Account numbers, contacts, the entire network. This is going to take down operations in 12 countries. Later, as Morgan sat in the FBI field office, Detective Harris approached her desk. So, he said, that accent was fake all along? Morgan smiled. Along with the clothes, the hair, and the personality. Well, for what it's worth, you had me completely fooled. He offered his hand. Nice work, Agent Chen. You too, Detective. Your distraction was perfect. Director Wilson entered, looking pleased. The U.S. Attorney is ecstatic. With the evidence you gathered, we're looking at convictions for the entire organization. Morgan nodded, feeling the familiar mix of exhaustion and satisfaction that came at the end of an undercover assignment. Lily Way's elegant clothes were gone, replaced by Morgan's comfortable FBI attire. Her highlighted hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. As she packed up Lily's personal effects, items that had been her life for months, Morgan reflected on how good it felt to be herself again. The case was closed, The criminals would face justice, and Special Agent Morgan Chen was back where she belonged. Until the next assignment called for her to disappear once more.